Good evening, everyone. A wholehearted welcome to today's program. Ignite presents How to Kickstart Your Architectural Career, an indispensable lecture for the budding architects, focusing on a much needed introduction to the paths of an architectural career, which includes JEE exam pattern, question answer sessions, exam preparation tips, and much more. The program is in three parts, which would be carried out by three dignitaries who has immense knowledge in the field of architecture. The first part is the introduction of career in architecture, which is given by architect senior PV. The second session is the JEE exam pattern and also the last rank details of NITs and SPAs, which would be carried out by Mr. Abhilash OS. And the third part of the lecture would be carried out by Mr. Abhinav, who would be speaking about the preparation tips and strategies, which would be followed by the final session, which is a question and answer session. So I invite Architect Senior PV to introduce us to the career in architecture. Architect Senior PV is a freelance architect who has worked on a variety of different projects, such as architect cum urban planner at Minds Work Consulting, Bangalore. She has received her master's in architecture from the renowned Institute CEPT in Ahmedabad. She has also an extensive teaching experience, having worked as an assistant professor in the School of Architecture, GEC Thrissur. So I invite you, ma'am. Over to you. Ma'am, you are not audible, ma'am.
Sorry. Yes, thank you, Hasna. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Uh, Let me introduce myself first. I am architect senior. I have completed my degree from School of Architecture, GEC Thrissur, and have done my master's from CEPT University in Urban and Regional Planning. And now presently I'm working as freelance architect and also working as a senior tutor in Ignite. Today's session mainly focuses on architecture as a career. Before going on to the main content of the session, let me introduce the topics that we are going to discuss. I think I am audible, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so let me share the screen. Today's session will be focusing on architecture as a career, mainly focusing on understanding what is architectural design and how is architectural design done. So the session includes, it will be discussed in three main parts. The first part will be consisting of who is an architect, difference between architecture and civil engineering, and what all does an architect do, and what is the holistic design approach in architectural design. And the second part includes why should you choose architecture and what are those architect skills and competencies that you need. And the third part consists of how to become an architect and what comes after BArch and about our aptitude tests in architecture presently in India. Okay, and these three sessions, in between these three sessions, we will be discussing about three interesting architectural design projects also. So I think the session will be interesting for you. Okay, welcome everyone. So, yes, before starting with how to become an architect, let's discuss what is and what does an architect do. I think most of us are unaware of the impact of architectural design, right? The impact of architectural design is that powerful, is very powerful that once Winston Churchill himself quoted, "We shape our buildings and thereafter they shape us." So buildings have that much impact on our life and our environment. Okay, and mostly people misunderstands the concept of architecture, and they just believe it is mainly related to how the building looks. Only the aesthetical part of the building is being noted and being appreciated, but it's not like that. It actually is how the beauty, it is how the building is interacting with its environment, the users of the building, and bring a positive change in their daily life through design. So it's not just the look of the building, but it's actually the interaction of the building with the environment and the users. Okay, and that should bring a positive change in their life also. And such a positively designed space can actually uplift our psychological state, the psychological state of users, and architecture thus affects what you feel. Okay. So one of the interesting projects in this category that we will be discussing here is the Somaya library, designed by Sameep Patora and Associates in Mumbai. So looking at the images of this project itself, we can see that it's not a typical library building that we see usually in our context. So the design actually breaks the conventional image of a library space, correct? By merging, what the architect have done is they have merged the outdoor spaces. The building is a formal extension of ground plane itself. As you can see from the ground plane, you can actually climb over the top of the building. So we can explain it in another way: a place inside for study, the library building, and a place above for playing, especially for the kids, and even for the faculty or non-teaching staff can use those spaces. Also, the library, about the location of the library actually lies, see in the first image, it actually lies in the intersection of the students' daily routine. So what happens is that it becomes a pavilion accessed by multiple sites, with students potentially engaging with these books while passing across this library building. Okay, so the architect himself is trying to make it a part of their routine to visit the library. Okay, and the interiors, if you see the second image, we can see a well-lit library space inside. So the interiors were designed to promote collaborative study, teamwork, group discussions, etc., with plenty of natural light and ventilation. Okay, so with this design, the architect could attract students inside the building. Okay, and actually speaking, the reason behind this design psychology, or what is the reason behind this type of a design? So with limited teaching resource in this area in Mumbai, in the larger vicinity, they designed the inspiring spatial experience to be a magnet to attract students. So in this locality, the students were not that much aware of the importance of education and other developmental activities. So the architect turned the design to act as a magnet to attract students and hopefully other residents from nearby settlements also. So this is a best example of how a design can positively influence the life of people, especially the kids in such a locality. So with this project, let us start our slide on who is an architect. Okay, an architect is actually a skilled professional who plans and designs buildings, and generally they also play a key role in the construction of the building also. And secondly, they connect art with science. I think it is a very rare field in which the art and science gets connected and can be applied in a single field. And these architects are highly trained in both art and science of the building design. That is a very unique feature of architectural career. And also they develop concepts for structure. As we have seen in the other project, the library project, the architect had a concept of attracting the kids in the surrounding environment to include in the activity, school activity and other interactions. So he merged the outdoor and indoor spaces. That was the concept of that library space. So an architect for each of his project develops a concept, and after that he makes those concepts into reality on the ground. And the fourth point says that architects mainly focus on the quality of the spaces, right? If we see each building, the spatial planning of each building, we can clearly see that each small space, whether it is small or large spaces, architects equally give importance to the quality of the spaces, the purpose of the space, etc. So these are the things that an architect do, and thus it explains who is an architect. So most of us confuse with architecture and civil engineering. So what is the major difference between architecture and civil engineering? Let's see. Architecture mainly deals with the spatial functionality. As I have said before, they look into the spatial planning, how the spaces gets connected, how users travel from one space to another, how are they using those spaces, what is the quality of each space, how is the light, how is the ventilation, etc. All these comes under the spatial functionality and quality. And also they look after the aesthetics of these buildings. Okay, on the other side, civil engineering concentrates mainly on the structural elements. Otherwise, we can say the strength of the building. Okay. Civil engineering mainly deals with the strength of the building. That means they designs how much load is the building going to bear, what should be the foundation, what shall be the strength of the walls, what kind of materials can be used to achieve that strength, etc. So all those mathematical things come under the civil engineering. All those structural design elements comes under the civil engineering career. Okay, hope I made it clear the difference between architecture and civil engineering. And again, we have a comparison slide on architecture and civil engineering. Let's see. Architecture so is more into the creativity of the design. So if you are a creative person and if you are passionate about architecture, you can surely apply your creativity in architectural design. Then on the other side, civil engineering mainly focuses on the innovation or the implementation of creative works or the creative designs. Whatever the architect have done, it will be made into reality by the civil engineering, because he decides what should be the structural elements and the strength of the building. Okay, and the next point says that architecture deals with quality of the spaces, and on the other side, civil engineering deals with the mathematical and scientific aspects of the building. Okay, and architecture mainly deals with the aesthetics, while civil engineering with the strength of the building. Architects, at the last note, what they have said is architects will need engineers to help to make their designs work, right? Whatever designs or creative works they have drawn, the architects have designed, that will be designed on site, or it will be made into reality by the civil engineering. So civil engineers on the other side will be guided by these architects. Okay, their outlines and drawings and dimensions. Drawings, civil engineers will construct the building. So both the careers have its own dignity, its own impact, or its own importance in our society. Okay, now what all does an architect do? So if you are becoming an architect, the scope of work, what all you will do in an office, or if you are practicing alone, what all things you need to do. Let's see. So architect, he is actually lead of all the construction works or the designing works that are going to be done on site. He coordinates the whole thing. Like if we are having civil engineers, structural engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical and plumbing workers, everything is being coordinated by this architect. Okay, and he works as a consultant with the clients. If some clients require an hospital building, then they will be coming to you asking for a design. So with the discussion with architects, clients get a clear idea of how their building is going to happen. From the clients, the architect gets an idea of how the user spaces need to be done. Okay, and the third point says that the architect need to design and document all those spaces, all those spatial plans documented properly. Next point says that the architects need to prepare drawings, correct whatever things we are imagining, whatever creative things we are designing, that need to be converted into drawings, whether it is a hand-drawn sketch or a software assisted drawing. It should be made by the architect himself or his team themselves, and prepare all those specifications and quotations of all those building materials, etc. And next, architects need to incorporate all those structural, mechanical and electrical, plumbing services and other details into their design. They are in charge of incorporating all those services into their plan, especially in case of apartment design and all. There need to be a lot of services that need to be done. So all these are done by architect himself. Then architect need to check whether the building satisfies building code and all those zoning regulations. Especially if some projects are coming near the airport authority or near the airport itself, then the zoning regulations might be different. So there might be some restriction on the height of the buildings. So accordingly, looking after the zoning regulations and building code, he should build or design his buildings. Then he or she should secure project approval and permissions from regulatory authorities. All those municipality permissions and everything comes under his scope. And finally, whatever complex design issues or problems that happens on site need to be taken care of architect himself. He need to or execute those solutions which are innovative and practical. Thus, these are the things that comes under the scope of an architect. Again, let's discuss another project, which is a quite impressive project. It is the Friendship Hospital in Bangladesh. It has won the RIBA International Prize 2021 for the best architectural design. Yes, let's discuss more on this project. Yes, sorry. So this Friendship Hospital is an 80-bed low-rise hospital, which is situated in the cyclone affecting areas of Bangladesh. Okay, so inspired by a powerful abstraction Bengal's riverine landscape, as you can see in the background of the building, there is this beautiful riverine landscape over there. The campus actually blends with its surrounding. Since it is a very low-rise hospital, it actually blends with the surrounding because of its material selection and also because of its form. It actually merges to its surrounding. And the layout is very simple and efficient. There are a series of courtyards. You can see in the images, you can see separate courtyards in each area, which brings natural ventilation towards the inner rooms of the hospital, while only the air conditioned spaces like OTs and treatment rooms are placed in the wind shadow area. Okay, and the interesting play of direct and reflected sunlight can be seen throughout the project. And you can see a canal is also running in the middle of the site. The canal, actually, the purpose of the canal was that it actually separates the OP department, the outpatient department, with the inpatient department. So without a clear barrier or wall in between, without creating between OP and IP departments, they have created a visual connectivity, or without breaking those visual connection or continuity, the architect have achieved separation between OP and IP department. So along with this canal, on either sides of this canal, they have large rainwater harvesting tanks also. So the purpose of this, the importance of this rainwater harvesting tanks are that the area in which the hospital is locating is actually having saline groundwater. Okay, so thus it was acting as a very precious resource. This rainwater, the harvested rainwater, acting as a very precious resource in this condition, as the groundwater was saline. Okay, so with this project, I think the positive impact of architecture career on the society is again very well established. Okay, next we will see the design approach of architectural design. Okay, when architects are designing a project, what all things they are going to take care of when designing the whole project? Let us see. Point by point, yes. First one is the site and context of the building. If we are designing, if architects are designing an hospital, they need to understand the site and context first. So the context means it includes the location, the neighborhood of the site, the topography, the climate, what is the access towards the site, and other site considerations like soil, the landscape, the trees inside the sites, etc. Okay, all these things comes under the site and context of the building design. The second part consists of the user group study and behavior, yet another important point. Okay, architects needs to see properly what their user group is. So what are these user groups needs, what are their goals, what are their frustrations, and their daily routine, behavior, etc. For example, if architects are designing an old age home, your user group is the old age people. We know how weak they are, so we need to support their health and mental condition along with our design. So we need to study their routine, their behavior, their needs, etc. That's how we study the user group. Okay, and the third point is the purpose of the space. We need to thoroughly understand the purpose of the space, whether the space is required or not. We shall not design unnecessary spaces, or you shall not waste resources on unnecessary spaces. Okay, and fourth point is the quality of the space. So how the people or the users interact among themselves, and what are the impact of this design over the users. All such things comes under the quality of the space. So that need to be taken care of. Also, the light and ventilation contributes to the quality of the space. Again, last but not least, the budget of the project also. The budget of the project need to be considered. Again, if it is a design mainly focusing on a low income group, we need to consider a low budget project. So whatever resources are locally available, if we are getting local workers or construction blocks. Everything which is locally available will be useful in such cases. And of course, if it is a luxury project, the architect need to be considering or need to consider all those luxury factors, all those components, the fixtures, everything need to be designed to meet those luxury requirements. So all these things are considered while designing an architectural piece. So if you are passionate about architecture, why should you choose architecture? What are those plus points if you choose architecture as your career? Architects are able to unleash their creativity. If you are a creative person and if you are passionate about buildings, then you can really apply your creativity in this architecture career. Architects also get to see the fruits of their labor, correct? If you have something in your mind, if there is a design idea in your mind, you can clearly see on site. You can implement your design on the site and you can see it really. So it is a really satisfying thing to see on site. Then the architecture students don't get bored in university because it's not a theory oriented course. You have so much of practical designs, discussions, activities like that. So we don't get bored in university studying BR course. Then architects are often specialists at everything. Since architects need to design buildings for all types of users, he or she should know about all fields. Especially if it is an unknown field, we used to study we shall conduct a case study before preparing the design. That's how we acquire knowledge on specific fields. If we are not aware of the hospital design, we need to conduct study of 2 or 3 hospitals first, and after that we will prepare a scheme for the design of a hospital. It's in this way that the design happens. Then the architects learn to be very good at defending their opinions. As I said before, in colleges, what we do are we prepare architectural design in our itself, and we present it before our teammates and faculty. So they will ask questions and we will have discussions on our projects and we need to defend our design. That's how we start to learn defending our own opinions and designs. And architects are able to do what they love for the rest of their life. Also, it is a unit which can also impact and improve the lives of countless people. Now, let's see what all are the architect skills and competencies required. So architect skills are he or she should be creative, they should be good at visualizing things and imagining spaces and forms. They should be good at verbal communication, because if you are presenting or communicating with your clients or workers on site or your co-workers, you need to be good at verbal communication. You should communicate properly. What is there in your mind should be clearly transferred to your co-workers. And then you should be an active listener and a good learner. Whatever things or knowledge that you get from your teammates or surroundings should be learned or cherished. Then you should have problem solving capacity. As we discussed earlier, there will be a lot of complicated issues or things that happen on site. It is not simple as that we think, but it will be little complicated also. But you should have that spirit and problem solving capacity to come over those issues. Then lastly, you should have thinking power also, so that in each issues or problems you can solve it using multiple solutions, or you can choose from multiple solutions. So these are the architect's and competencies. So let's move on to another interesting project. You can see from the image itself, it's a really interesting project with lots of play of light and shadows. I think most of us avoid using public toilets, right? Because of its limited lighting and ventilation and all those cluttered design. Here we can see the light box restroom for women in Maharashtra done by Rohan Chavan architects. So what's difference in this design? This restroom design welcomes all the natural light and ventilation and thereby attract users to benefit from a good spatial quality and cleanliness. So this restrooms not only serves ordinary people, but it has facilities for handicapped and also for senior citizens. So all type of have been taken care of, or although all those requirements have been taken care of. And the center of the restroom is actually a tree, is a garden, and that can be used for resting, or it can be used as a free gallery to display artworks, or it can be a place for awareness campaigns as it is a town city area. And also in festival seasons and seasonal activities and events can also be done in a small scale, and thus this central area room becomes an area to socialize. Okay, in the urban context, such spaces are really important. Thus, beyond these toilet blocks, these restrooms aim to provide women an exclusive social space, and something that is typical of an urban landscape in India. So that's how another building positively impacted an urban space. So with that, see how you can become an architect if you are interested. If you are still interested in architecture, how can you become an architect? So first you need to apply for entrance examinations like NATA and JEE. You need to crack those entrance examinations. Then after getting a seat in a college, you need to earn a bachelor's degree in architecture. Along with that, you will be having an internship program within this bachelor's degree period. You need to participate in internship program. From there, you can learn practical things about architecture from an office under a senior architect. Then, after your completion of course, you need to become licensed. So here in India, we have Council of Architecture, where all the students and architects who have completed their bachelor's degree can get licensed. So you need to apply in Council of Architecture and get your registration number. With that, you can start your own practice, work independently, or you can apply for another architect position in some other firms. After that, you can earn professional certifications also, or you can consider research or master's degree. And also, what are the other doors that open after BArch as a career? Here are urban planning and town planning, transportation planning, housing, infrastructure planning, etc. Then you have urban design, where you concentrates on the urban spaces, the design of the urban spaces. Then you have landscape architecture, where you design the landscape of a building. Then you have restoration or conservation architect who takes care of all those restoration works of historical buildings, etc. And if you are interested in designing the interior spaces of an architectural piece, you can further studies in interior design also. And if you are interested to study further, you can go opt for research architect. And we have another interesting part, and it is product designer or an industrial designer. That is, you can all those furniture design, automobile designing, UX designing, all the design fields comes under this industrial design or product design. And of course, you have this very precious field of teaching where you can share and acquire knowledge on architecture and continue your studies in this architecture field. So the aptitude test in architecture mainly there are two aptitude tests, mainly NATA and JEE. And all these exams measures the aptitude of the applicant, and mainly what they are assessing is that whether the student is having cognitive skills, visual perception skills, the aesthetic sensitivity tests will be there, logical reasoning questions and critical questions will be there. So all these things will be covered under the aptitude test. So you will be having multiple choice questions and also a drawing test. Thus, they get an idea of your aptitude in architecture. So here are, so mainly the second part consists of drawing sessions in kind of aptitude test. So these are some of my student sketches. You can see all these are pencil sketches. Very few have been included in the PPT. Okay, this is another one. Okay, these are some sample JEE questions and answers. Hope you got an idea of the aptitude test and the topic. Yes, thank you. Hope the session helped you all to understand more about architecture as a career. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your inspiring words. I'm sure everyone here would have got an idea about what being an architect means, and what would be done if we become an architect, and what to be done after being an architect. So thank you so much for your inspirational words, ma'am.
Welcome, welcome.
Now, moving on to the second session on the JEE exam pattern and last rank details carried out by Mr. Abhilash OS, who is an alumni of IIT Hyderabad. Mr. Abhilash has immense knowledge in not only mathematics, but also about how to crack national level entrance examinations. He has successfully guided students to secure top ranks in architectural entrance exams and more. Over to you, sir.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
ഒന്നും ചെയ്യണ്ട ഉള്ളത് നടക്കട്ടെ. കുഴപ്പമില്ല നിങ്ങൾക്ക് കണ്ടിരിക്കാം. Audible?
Yes, sir.
Asna, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible, sir. Hello, sir, can you hear me?
Okay. So hi all. I hope all the students attending these sessions and the parents attending these sessions are GR aspirants. And in the initial talks, senior architect, senior ma'am already discussed about the career path of an architect. And as all of you are architect aspirant students and their parents, and in India, we have more than 500 architecture schools. So while selecting a architecture school, we have to take care of lot of things. So I am here to guide with my experience how to select the best architecture school in India. Like, for example, the top rank institutes like IITs, SPA, NITs, and some other colleges like College of Engineering, Trivandrum and all that come under the top 10 or 20 architecture schools under NIR ranking. So how to get admission in all these schools, how to get a good cut-off score so that you can clear the exams and get a good seat in the top BR colleges in India. So, while preparing for such an entrance exam like JEE and NATA, you have to take care of the subjects, the competition, and the exam pattern, and you have to take care of all these things while preparing for these sessions. Anyhow, in the coming sessions, Abhinav will take care of how to prepare for BR. I am just giving a flavor of the exam, just a flavor of the exam pattern and the last rank details and how to target top architecture colleges in India. So anyhow, last year JEE main exam conducted 4 times, but for architect aspirant students we get only 2 chances. This year also we are expected to conduct 2 sessions for BR aspirant students. So coming to the pattern, we are expecting the same pattern of the last year to be continued this year. Anyhow, NTA will release the syllabus of JEE Main 2002 in the official website soon. So once it's released, you can go through the syllabus and make out of it. Anyhow, while going through the exam pattern, we have 25 max questions that carry 100 marks. Out of these 25 questions, 5 out of 10 will be numerical value have to be answered, and other 20 MCQs that carry negative mark also. While coming to the aptitude section, we have a 50 questions and that carry 200 marks, and it contains logical aptitude as well as general knowledge, architecture awareness, architecture aptitude, history of architecture. All these topics come inside this aptitude exam. And normally we have to answer 2 drawing questions, each carry 50 marks, and one will be a coloring type of questions, and second will be a perspective kind of questions. More about that will be discussed in the coming session. Anyhow, this is the exam pattern. So while preparing for JEE mains, you have to understand the competition. Normally, students getting 99.5 or above will get seats in any of the NITs or SPAs easily in the first or second allotment. If you are having a percentile of 99.5 or below, depending upon the competition, we have chances, but we have to wait up to 6th, 7th allotment to get a seat. When we go through the last rank details of the last 2 years, hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes.
Hello,
Yes,
am I
sir.
audible?
You are audible. Yes, sir.
Hello, hello. Any sound issues came? So right now for the time I'm continuing. Sorry for the interruption. So while planning to get seats in the top institutes in India, like SPA Delhi and all, if you go through it, in 2019, the last time detail of the SPA Delhi after 6th allotment is 768, but it come to 230 in 2020 and 239 in the 2021. So what we have to understand from this chart is the competition is increasing every year, especially in the field of architecture. It's only because of the fact that quality architects from top these schools and quality of the architects from the top is higher than the quality of the architects coming from other institutes in India. So students prefer to study in top architecture colleges like SPAs, NIT, and IITs. Here I have the chart of all SPAs and NITs and the last time details. If you check it, what we can understand is even in NIT Calicut also, the competition is increasing every year. The last year, the last rank details of general category, other state is 451 in NIT Calicut. So every year the competition is increasing. So students have to prepare well, study well, and write the exam in the proper manner to get admissions in the top institutes. So these all are things that I have to share uh, uh, by discussing about the last rank details of all colleges. So, as an architecture aspirant, you have to write JEE and get good scores to get seats in NITs. If you are looking for other top institute like CEPT Ahmedabad, CET Trivandrum and all, you have to write the NATA exams. So for getting admissions in architect, either you have to clear JEE with good score, or you have to write NATA with good score. That is a must condition for getting seats into architecture career. These all are things that I have to discuss for all JEE and NATA aspirants, students of 2022. Here I am winding up my section, and all your doubts and queries will be answered in the question answer session after next talk. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your words. I'm sure it must have been very important for the students who are aspiring to become architects and join architectural colleges. So now moving on to the third session, which would be carried out by Mr. Abhinav, who is an aspiring third-year undergraduate IITN architecture student who has a passion for science and technology. Mr. Abhinav would be speaking to you on the preparation tips and strategies for JEE. A strong believer in the power of architecture to redefine our world, an orator in speech, a musician at heart, and a designer at the core. Mr. Abhinav is the best person to speak to an architect. He himself has scored the All India rank of 944 in JEE main paper 2, airing the All India rank of 7124 in JEE Advanced, and 10th rank in CET Karnataka. I invite Abhinav to give the speech.
Hello everyone. And yeah, first I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this wonderful opportunity to have this discussion with the aspiring architects of our country. So before I actually move on to my presentation, I would just like to share a quick story from my own life. That is how I ended up taking architecture as a profession or as one of my favorite careers of choice. So, since childhood, I have always enjoyed playing with Lego blocks, that is, these plastic building blocks that we get. And since childhood, the thing I used to be the most happiest to receive as a birthday gift were these plastic building blocks. So, that is where my love for architecture, that is mainly the development of form, buildings, and things that human beings use as spaces to be in, that is where my love for this profession started. But somewhere down the line, in eighth grade, I started to develop a keen interest towards science, especially physics and more namely astrophysics, that is mainly dealing with space. So then I started to get a bit confused and I started my preparation for JEE Advanced and NAME. And I was a bit confused between taking up pure science and architecture. But a time came in class 12, I still remember that day. That day, I was wondering for myself, do I really want to leave architecture behind for taking up pure science? And from within, the answer was a resounding no. For that was my love and passion for architecture. So, architecture, as senior architect Nehia ma'am has pointed out, and also sir has pointed out, architecture is a profession driven by passion. It is a profession driven by creativity. So, architecture welcomes all with a creative, open, and passionate mind willing to learn. So, moving on with the session about the preparation strategies. Is my screen visible?
Yeah, yes, it is visible.
Okay. So what are the preparation tips and strategies? These are a few strategies and tips. This is not the only strategies and tips I would say. This is a few strategies and tips I have developed from my personal real life experience, and I would definitely like to share with all of you. But a disclaimer, everyone has their own method of preparing for the exam. So this is not a holy Bible, or it is not a, a golden rule for preparation. So moving on. Yeah. So first of all, where can JE2 exactly get you? Well, there's a slight confusion when it comes to architecture, especially because unlike engineering exams, which is more standardized and has a fixed exam of JE mains and JE advanced, architecture is a bit more all over the place. So we have JE main paper two, as sir mentioned, which is mainly going to get you a direct admission into the BR programs like NITs, SPAs, and other CFTIs, that is centrally funded technical institutes. Often some states create their own separate ranking systems, like the example of Karnataka itself. Based on the JE2 and NATA marks, they publish the ranks for the state itself, and all the private colleges in that state give the admission based on this. However, there are also some colleges, generally private, as sir mentioned, like CEPT, wherein you would have to apply personally based on your JE or NATA 2 scores, or they may have their own individual entrance exams. So, what is exactly the pattern of JE2? I think I can skip over this because it has already been mentioned in clearly. So, yeah, coming to the preparation tips for mathematics. Well, I know mathematics is perhaps one of the most hated subjects because, yes, it is definitely not the easiest out there, to put it mildly. So, one of the main things for math is practice, practice, and practice. When I still remember when I was in class 11, I had just started my JE coaching, and the first chapter that we were learning was trigonometry. So I still remember I was trying to solve one question. I was trying to solve it for like close to like 40 to 50 minutes, and yet I was unable to solve it. And I felt really, really bad. But then eventually I spoke to my teachers, and they all told me that it does take time initially. Initially, you may feel that you're really, really slow. You are unable to solve anything that's given at you. How are you going to crack the exam? Well, that is all pressure. Do not worry. With time, you would get better. So then another obvious thing is solve the past year question papers, because often a lot of questions appear with similar patterns, and even though they don't form, like even if they don't occur as it is in the exam, they are a very useful practice tool because they are from the same syllabus. So how to practice smart? Well, this is really important. It is just not about sitting for 16 hours a day and practicing. It is about practicing smartly. So initially, as I mentioned, your questions would take 35 to 40 minutes, but do not get discouraged. Continue. Do not worry. Eventually, it would reduce to 15 to 30 minutes. Continue to speed up. Once you have reached a stage of knowledge, of knowing a certain chapter or knowing a certain topic, you can just skim through the questions. Like often several questions are just repeated. So once you have got to that certain level of knowing about that particular topic, you would just be able to read the question and maybe just think in your mind what are the steps you would be using to solve it. Just the steps, that is, I would use this formula and then I would proceed. If you're able to do it that way, you needn't sit and solve that question. At that stage, you have to start solving questions that do not seem easy, that are really difficult, and you are not able to think of the procedure just by looking at it. And then before the exam, solve a lot of mock question papers, set your own time limits. So these are some textbooks that are often recommended, and some of them even I have referred myself. Well, one very common misconception is the NCRT textbook is not at all useful. It is only the JEE preparation manuals that are useful. But I would beg to differ, especially from a JEE mains point of view, especially for the mathematics part of it. NCRT Exemplar, that is one of the publications by the CBSE, by the NCRT itself. It is one of the best starter books for you to start off with JEE, because NCRT mathematics textbook obviously has your basic theory, but then NCRT Exemplar has objective questions in a very similar pattern to the JEE mathematics that is going to occur. So you guys must definitely consider looking at NCRT Exemplar. Do not ignore this. Then yeah, of course, Arihant publication, JEE Main and one series. This is slightly of a higher level, I would say. Then previous year solved question papers without a doubt, and also the NATA JEE preparation books by Ignite itself. So yeah, preparation tips for aptitude test. So as I mentioned, math is one of the most important components of your paper. It is going to influence your rank to a huge extent because math is the main differentiator in JEE main paper 2 especially. Because math here is at the same level as JEE main paper 1 and often people are doing paper 2 are unable to give that to a really good level. So math ends up being one of the main differentiators in your rank. So moving on to the aptitude test, this is generally supposed to be a more scoring part of the test as questions are mainly theoretical and they are often knowledge based. That is, by simple observation, one would be able to answer the same. They are more of a general knowledge type of questions. So for this, mainly using preparation modules for theory is more than sufficient, and a lot of questions are often repeated and paraphrased. So I actually did do my coaching under Jigisha ma'am. So yeah, so she did definitely help me out with this part. So then comes preparation tips for the drawing test. Yeah, so often what happens is the main difficulty in JEE is a lot of questions, at least one question is generally related to perspective drawing. That is real life scene, that is how you would actually see it in real life. You're expected to do the same thing on the sheet. So for that, one of the most important concepts is that of perspective. Several of us have not learned this prior, so it is, we can definitely learn it. It is pretty simple concept. We just need to understand how things look, and with repeated practice we would definitely get better. So it is important to mainly look up at 1 point and 2 point perspectives, 3 point perspectives to a lesser extent, but yeah, that too can be considered. So for this, one of the best ways is to actually look up tutorial videos on YouTube. There are several wonderful tutorial YouTube videos that can be referred to, and they do explain the entire concept. That is, often perspective drawing, to put it simply, it has a lot of concept of construction lines. That is, rather than just drawing something freehand on the paper, you would make a sort of grid in a very particular manner and then decide how to actually put in your things. So that grid is actually going to be one of the bases of your drawing. So how to actually make that base grid, that is what these videos will teach you, and with practice you would definitely get much better. So yeah, points to keep in mind. These are often not heeded to, and this creates a bit of difficulty in the drawing test. One is that practice drawing without a ruler, because often at times examinations don't allow their use. It depends on center to center. Somehow my NATA center had allowed the ruler, but if I'm not mistaken, my JEE main paper 2 center didn't allow the use of a ruler. So it is better you don't be reliant on a ruler. You get the hang of drawing straight lines without a ruler, because at times it is very questionable whether they're going to allow you to take the ruler in or not to the examination hall. Then another thing is stroke practice. So one would think that from day one, okay, fine, I should make a complete perfect Picasso artwork. Well, that is not true. You first need to start at the basics. Just like how we cannot form sentences and paragraphs without knowing the alphabets. Similarly, even in drawing, your alphabets of drawing are strokes, that is mainly lines that we use to create the drawing. So it is important that stroke practice is done. We have to master the art of making freehand parallel lines. That is, maybe take an A4 size sheet, just draw repeatedly a set of lines and try to make them as much parallel as possible to each other and as close as possible to each other. So you can draw horizontal lines, you can draw vertical lines, you can draw diagonal lines. You can keep doing this practice for a few days till you start to see that your sheet is looking more or less well composed. That is, the lines are more or less parallel and they are not deviating too much. Then you can move on to practicing with vary lines. That is, repeatedly drawing vary lines that are parallel to each other. So once you actually get the hang of this, you can actually move to the actual drawing part of it. So never forget, stroke practice is the basis of everything. Then another thing is perspective concepts that, as I mentioned earlier, can be very well understood by practice and from the YouTube tutorials. Then another thing is abstracting human figures. So yeah, often what happens is several of the questions, as the eminent speakers mentioned earlier, they are often around drawing real life scenes, like what would be the scene on a Diwali night, or maybe an interior scene of a dining table in a house or a kid's bedroom or something like that. So often these scenes look underworked and they look dead without actually adding the human component to it, because often whenever we show scenes, The first thing, let's say I'm talking about Diwali scene. So when people are celebrating Diwali, the first thing you would expect people to be doing is bursting firecrackers. So I need to get comfortable with actually drawing human beings. But I would agree. I personally, I used to loathe drawing human beings. I used to be really bad at it, and until I actually started to practice and realized that for such drawings we needn't draw the human beings to a very perfection. Like here, the main importance is the surroundings. That is, how is your entire perspective working? Is it looking fine? Is it looking like a 3D scene? They are not they're not focusing mainly on how your human beings actually look. So it is important that you learn to draw human beings, but these need to be simple human beings. Like by abstraction, I basically mean that they should not be an actual human being, maybe just an indication that a human being is here, a very simple quick way to draw a human being. This too, you can refer to several YouTube tutorials. I have a lot of videos available online. Then, yeah, important is color concepts. This is also something several of us may not know about from our school days itself. So, color concepts, well, basically, why it's important that we would see ahead. So, I would skip over this part for now. Then, also composition with 3D and 2D shapes that will be understood in greater depth ahead. Then comes interior space idea. So, often at times, as I mentioned earlier, realistic scenes like a Diwali scene or maybe a festival scene, such scenes, it is understood, okay, what am I actually supposed to draw? But at times, questions also appear wherein they say, draw a small girl's bedroom or maybe draw a kitchen of a house. So, for that, it is better if you have prior exposure, that is, you look up photos online of how are good kids' bedrooms look. That is, what do they generally place? Is it a soft toy they place, or is it a sort of curtain? And generally, if it is in the curtain, what type of curtain do they use? Similarly, even for buildings. So, if you look up previous examples and also previous examples of what students have drawn, you would be able to understand this to a better extent. Then also a lot of more simpler questions, I would say, on patterns and symmetry. This is something that's inherent to human beings. So this should not be an issue at all. Yeah. So one of the main questions that generally always comes in JEE main paper 2 is about compositions. And that can either be a composition with 2D shapes and a composition with 3D shapes. Well, I'm pretty sure all of you are now wondering what is a composition. Well, to put it simply, as it is shown in the images right here, what is it? It is essentially they have used simple shapes. Like I can see a triangle here, and then I can see some other sort of shape over it. I can see a circle. So a composition is a way of using a mixture of different shapes. Often they may give restrictions on the shape. They may say only supposed to use triangles, circles, and pentagons. But at times they may leave it open-ended. So it depends from a case-to-case basis. So based on this, you are supposed to make a very simplistic drawing. So now you guys would be wondering, what is there in this? Like, how do I know that this composition is going to look better than that? Like, how do I even judge? Like, what is telling me that this composition is perhaps better than the composition on the right? How do I know that? So for that, three things matter mainly. The first is your color choice. So as I mentioned earlier, color choice is extremely important. Based on the type of colors I put, it can convey different meanings. So I will take an example. Let us say you're making a composition in which you're mainly using red. So what does red stand for? Generally, in especially in India, in the Indian context at least, red stands for danger. That is, it is a warning sign. So maybe if you put an excessive of red in your composition, it may give people the feeling of danger. But let's say on the same time, I make some sort of wavy shape and I color it blue. So, what can that represent? When people see it, you may say it's a river because a river is wavy, a river is blue in color. It can also be an ocean wave. So, your color choice is going to be really important. Also, you may want to use sort of contrasting colors, like you may use a complete white background and you may suddenly put a huge circle of red. So, then what would happen? When I have a complete white background and a huge red circle in the middle, I am going to see the red circle first. That means I'm drawing the eye towards the red circle. So, this is how color can influence a composition to a great extent. So, one can look up several videos about color theory online, very simplistic videos about what are the different types of color schemes. There are several color schemes like analogous, uh, complementary color schemes. This is basically just an orientation for you guys, so you guys can build upon this further. Then another thing is symmetry and balance. So as you can see here in this artwork, the artwork, my eyes is not getting drawn towards a very particular corner of the artwork. It seems to be balanced. Like I'm able to see everything almost equally. I'm able to see the blue part behind. I'm able to see the gray part. Also, the shape is drawing. No part of that certain composition is calling my attention. Please see me. No, that's not happening. So that is what is called as balance. So it is important that your compositions must be balanced. That is, you may make a very beautiful composition, but let's say I put a huge red circle in the center. Everyone is going to end up seeing that. Let's say I put very light blues all around and a huge red circle in the center. Everyone is going to see that. So that may be what you want, but that may also not be what you want. It depends. Then another thing comes is contrast and variety. So as you can see in this image itself, there is variety in the background. They have just not given a plain gray background. What is adding interest to this background is the essence of that blue thing, of the blue background cutting across the entire sheet, and that is what is adding the beauty to that composition. So then coming to 3D composition, these are just some examples, and this is why 3D drawing is really important, especially how to shape, because as you can see, the very notion that okay, this is perhaps a pyramid is because this shape has been shaded in a lighter color and this shape has been shaded in a darker color. So when a human brain sees it, the human brain is able to automatically decipher that, okay, fine, this is a three-dimensional object. So shading is really important to 3D compositions. So at times now, JEE Main paper 2, they say they give the option between a 3D or a 2D composition, or they say that, or they restrict you to either one. So it depends on your luck and which way you're convenient with. So yeah, I don't know if I made this clear earlier. A 2D composition is mainly using shapes. A 3D composition is mainly using 3D objects. So as you can see here, they mainly used a pyramid, they've used a cube, they've used a sphere, they've used a cylinder. They have used some sort of cube with some sort of cutouts and also some other cutouts here. So what matters in this? Here also symmetry and balance matters. So if you see this composition, we have a central cylinder. Like in this composition, everything arises from the central cylinder. Like we have this plate coming out, we have the sphere coming out. So the central cylinder is the main tying element of the entire composition. So that is important. Also contrast and variety. There is variety in this composition. We mainly have curved things at the bottom end, that is like a cylinder, a plate, a sphere, but we also have a very pointy pyramid on the top. So that is adding a lot of variety in the 3D composition. Also then comes harmony and stability. So as I mentioned earlier, no particular form, that is no particular object in this is drawing my attention. Everything seems to be well balanced. So this you would eventually understand with practice what makes a good composition and what makes not a great composition. I'll just tell you a pro tip that I did. This happened in my NATA paper. Somehow by luck, I had actually made a composition prior while I was practicing one of the mock papers at my home. And somehow by luck, they gave the same constraints of shapes. Like they told the exact same shapes, you can use these shapes. So I was actually lucky in a way that I could do the same composition there in the exam. I actually had to sit and think about a composition again. So you too could actually make a few compositions prior hand, maybe get them checked by people who actually know about what is a good composition, and maybe like just go to the exam. If you're lucky enough, you may just have to end up drawing the same thing. Then comes patterns and symmetry. This is something that's really inherent to human beings and it should not be a big of an issue. Yeah, then comes real life scenes. As the eminent speaker showed earlier, they did show several examples of few of the drawings. These are another few drawings that I could obtain. So yeah, a very important note here. When we talk about real life scenes, it is not only what you're actually going to encounter in real life. Like see here, this is a scene of maybe a barber shop. This is a scene of maybe someone peeping through the eye hole of your house. But also at times, this generally doesn't happen in JEE Main paper 2. Mostly it happens in NATA, but occasionally they do it in JEE Main paper 2. They do give very fairy tale type of scenarios. Like what I mean by fairy tale type of scenarios, like they would say, assume you're a shrunk person, assume you're a miniature ant sized person and you're sitting in a pencil box. Draw the scene of a pencil box. So you have to actually imagine yourself sitting in a pencil box. Actually imagine the huge box around you, the huge pencil, the huge sharpener. You have to basically imagine yourself as an ant. So it is important that you don't only practice what you're going to encounter as a human being, but also think about what you may encounter when you have a shrunk person, that is maybe as an ant, or maybe as a worm, or maybe as a bird. So these are often a bit challenging questions they give. Generally, they don't appear in JEE main paper 2, but I would personally recommend that you practice at least one or two questions like this prior going to the exam. So here's an example of that. Here the prompt was perhaps imagine you have an ant in a shaving kit. So as you can see, or maybe a beauty products kit, whatever you would like to call it. So as you can see, there's a comb, there is these tweezers, there's a lot of cosmetic products, there's a nail cutter, there's a filer. So it is important that you also think about it from this angle too. Uh, yeah. So I think that's all I have from my end.
Thank you, Abhinav, for providing such insights as to what questions they could expect for their exams in such a brief yet detailed manner. I'm sure everyone present here would have got an idea as to how to prepare themselves. And I also request everyone present here to follow these tips and tricks to prepare yourselves comfortably. Now, moving on to the final session of the program, which is a question and answer discussion session, where the dignitaries would take your questions, doubts, and dilemmas and provide you with answers and guidances so that you can pursue your passion and your career in architecture with confidence. So, I request every aspiring architect present here to make use of this opportunity and put forward your questions. Students, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Hello, ma'am. Can you
Yes,
hear me?
yes, you are
Ma'am,
audible.
I would like to get an idea about how much marks do I need to score if I want to become an under if I want to come under 500 rank. What's like? Can you give me a brief idea about it?
Yes, I think Ablash sir will be able to answer this. Sir, could you please help me?
Asna, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Then, give a brief idea about your score, so that that be helpful for him also. How much you scored in aptitude, how much you scored in
I,
max, and what about your drawing percentage and all. That will give
yes,
him an idea.
yes, sir. So actually, for JEE, for the first part, for the
Hello?
drawing, yes, sir, yes, sir. So I will tell about my marks so that you will be able to relate to it. So for the JEE, for the drawing session, I had got 99.1 percentile, and for the max, I had got 94. And I remember answering like 4 answers correct, and no, I had correct 4 to 5 questions. I had made correct with
No,
some
actually, what I
mistakes.
think is you have got something around 9 questions correct. What I-
Thank you.
Something, yeah, something around 30 marks you got in max, and
And for
in the
aptitude,
aptitude section you got something around 185 and 190. Right. Yeah, aptitude scores. Okay,
yes,
Ajit, that was a score of Hasna, and she got 99.91 percentage. Okay, depending upon the competition every year, the cutoff mark will vary. So what would like to say is, mm, mm, rank and cutoff marks not based on just marks merely. It depends on the competition. So if you are getting around 175 to 185 score in aptitude and 20 to 30 marks in NATS and somewhat average drawing means you will get a percentage of 99.5 or above. That's the general thing. But if the competition is tight, with less marks also you have chance. If the exam paper is very easy, you have to score more to get a good percentage. So that's a it's like that. We can't say with this much mark you will get this much score. It's not like that. Okay. I hope you understand what I mean.
Yes, thank you, sir.
More questions? Does anyone have any more doubt that they would like to clear? Actually, I had a question for Abhinav, if it's okay. I actually wanted to know, like you said about your experience before going for architecture and during your entrance preparation. I would like to know your experience after getting into an architectural college. Hello, was I not audible?
Abhinav, can you hear me?
Hello, yeah, I lost you for a bit. Could you repeat?
Yeah, I actually wanted to know about your experience. Actually, you talked about your experience before joining for architecture and your experience during the preparation of architecture. I wanted to know what you feel after getting into an architectural college.
Oh, okay. Uh, Fine. I put it. Okay, fine. So essentially, yeah, so architecture, I personally found it to be a really fun and interesting course. Like, I personally enjoyed, like, I never regretted even a single minute of taking architecture as my degree. That's how much I enjoy this course. Uh, Architecture in an offline scenario is really, really fun. Like, often our studios are open late at night. We often sit together. We often have a lot of group projects. I think even Nihia ma'am specified about the same. That is, architecture is a lot about design thinking. You're supposed to communicate your ideas to others. You're supposed to work in a team. You're supposed to understand people's mindsets. So often a lot of projects in architecture are related to group projects. They're often group projects. So often we sit in our department and we have a lot of fun discussions. We do our work side by side and also have a lot of fun. uh, Also online too, it is really really fun. Like often at times we do have a lot of submissions, but at the same time we also know how to fund. Like in fact, in the entire institute our department is pretty famous. Like often what happens is, since architecture students are often doing a lot of group projects between themselves, they often go together everywhere together, like to the department, outside the department, if they're going to maybe a canteen or something of that sort. So it's like always you will find architecture students as a group. So we are quite famous in our institute for that. Like they're like, okay, fine, you're from architecture, so yeah, I can see that pretty much. We do have a lot of assignments. I won't say that the workload is low as such. It is quite comparable to an engineering degree, if not more. I would say it is on the higher side itself. But at the same time, unlike other degrees wherein the focus is on exams, here the focus is mainly on assignments and projects. We are mainly asked to work on problems. Like often our professors deal with it like clients. Like they would often come in and they would maybe say that, okay, I'm your client, I want such and such a building, these are all my specifications. So then we would have be expected to perhaps make a first submission, and the prof would say, I don't like this. This is not good. This is not going to work. So a lot of fun discussion, a lot of learning, peer review. We learn a lot from each other also. In fact, it is not only a in classroom based teaching wherein the teacher or the professor is teaching us everything. We also learn a lot from each other as a group. That is, maybe I would just be walking by, I would see one of my friends, and I'll be like, why are you doing this? You could do it this way instead. And maybe the same way I would be doing something, my friend would be walking by and say, why are you doing this? Do that. In fact, essentially, even those who maybe take an architecture degree, but at the end are maybe not actually going to go into architecture. There are cases like that in especially the NITs and IITs, wherein students do take up architecture degree, but they may end up going to other fields. Often, what I have heard, especially from our alumni, is that the architecture degree had been really beneficial in shaping them as a person itself. Like, though they may not essentially apply the actual concepts of architecture, the very idea of collaboration, repeated discussion, trying to understand the other person's viewpoint, that is, why, what does the other person exactly want? How should I actually make the space for that person? All of these are really, really important things for other fields too, because as of now, they are currently not that well developed in other fields. I don't know if you guys are aware, there is this certain way of thinking called design thinking. It is becoming quite popular of late across the world in several disciplines. So, design thinking is mainly based on the approach that I'm going to put myself into the other person's shoes and understand their problem. So, often those who don't end up doing architecture but may have done the architecture degree, they are already oriented to design thinking. They are already oriented towards thinking about it from the person's other user's point of view. It can be a customer. If you're talking about software coding, it can be about the user, like this is the user of the website. If you're talking about management, it could be about the customer. So it depends. So architecture, they what my alumni especially say is that it develops you as a human being. Though you may not end up doing architecture, then it develops you as a human being. And yeah, if you definitely go into architecture, another one of my alumni did say the same thing. If we see the world's economy today, the construction industry, that is all of that's what encompasses all of architecture, construction of structures, civil engineering, whatever you would call as construction, that accounts one of the largest portions of our world's economy. So that itself is really important. On top of that, construction is one of the least digitized sectors today. That is, we have softwares, we have coding, management has become more or less software oriented. A lot of other fields have become a lot of software oriented. A lot of digital technology has come in. But if you look at the construction industry today, especially if you're talking about India, it is still in more of a backward realm, I'll say. You still have people actually going to the construction site to these huge A1 size sheets, and they're like, okay, fine, they'll circle this, they'll circle that. There is a lot of scope for development in this field. There is a lot of scope because these ideas of technology, these ideas of digitalization are yet to come in. And now you all guys know, especially after the pandemic, I'm sitting at the home, you all are perhaps sitting at home and are not in your institution. So how are you going to design your institution? Like, that is one of the pressing concerns. What are you going to do to ensure that you can still stay in college, but still, despite the pandemic, and still you can have classes safely, rather than just saying everyone sit at home and you're going to do classes online. So there is a lot of scope, a lot of changes are going to be thrown up in architecture. There are a lot of articles being written. It is a very happening profession. That is, any issue happens in the world, the first thing that is impacted is the spaces we occupy. That is, be it a coding engineer, be it a manager, be it a top level employee, be it maybe even a small person having a small shop. Everyone is using space, a space that we have constructed. So architecture as a profession has a lot of scope in this world.
Thank you, Abhinav. Now, if the students have more questions, please do put them first.
Ma'am, I would like to know about the difference between SPA, NIT, and IIT syllabus and and curriculum, and what is the difference if I go to NIT and IIT, the whole syllabus structures and all.
So, Abhilash sir, would you like to answer?
Oh yeah, well, essentially,
These
see,
things, these things, I think you people can answer more. Abhinav and Hasna can discuss.
Okay, sir.
see, essentially, what happens is the syllabus is set by the Council of Architecture. Okay, like the Council of Architecture has certain fixed subjects that architecture students have to learn. Like there is a pretty good amount of standardization, I would say. Like I have often spoken to students from other architecture colleges, and we are able to connect over subjects. Like when I say have this subject, like yeah, okay, even we have that subject. There may be a slight variation in that, perhaps in the NITs and IITs what would happen is they may end up being a greater focus on technical things of architecture, the technical aspects. Yes, I can see Hasna nodding in agreement. Because what happens in NITs and IITs is these are not exclusively architecture colleges. They have a lot of interdepartmental connections. So as I mentioned, when you are studying in an NIT or IIT, you are also exposed to what is happening in the world of technology. Often, especially in my college, I don't know what is the case in NITs. In IIT Kharagpur, we have certain subjects of engineering departments. Like we need to have a good understanding of structures, like civil engineering. We have some basic subjects of civil engineering. Those are taught to us by civil engineering professors with civil engineering students. So that is often a bit more technical than maybe perhaps say in an exclusively architecture colleges like SPA, wherein they are only catering to an architecture audience. So if you want a more of a like cross-disciplinary exposure, if you also want to know what is going on in data science, okay, what is going on in coding, what is going on in civil engineering, because mind you, all of these are important architecture. They are all going to have implications in the construction industry. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of this has not come into construction industry. If you're talking about data analytics, I think you people don't know about it. I'll just give you a gist. Basically, data analytics means that I basically try to survey people and then I try to like draw inferences from it. Like I try to make some, okay, fine, maybe if I do this thing, I'm going to get this result. So it's something like a way you want to predict what is happening. So this can have great implications in architecture. I may want to predict if I design in this way, how are people going to like the space? How are they going to respond? So IITs and NITs they do definitely give a lot of cross disciplinary exposure. That is one of the main advantages of NITs and IITs. But if you're mainly focused on design, that is, you only want to do design, or you are really into core, like even I'm into core architecture, I won't put it that way. SPAs and CPTs, they also have a name. There, the main focus is mainly on design. They may not focus much on the technical things. Even we focus a lot on design, but there, everything is anything works for design. So it's a slight difference in approach, but at the end of the day, the architects who come out of both IITs, NITs, and SPAs, they're almost at an equal level because, as I mentioned, it is a standardized syllabus. There may be a few variations, that is, IITs may end up having a few subjects like economics and that SPAs or CPT may not have. I'm not exactly aware about this, but as far as I've spoken to my friends, I've not found them to have such subjects. So it just depends. Like you may see the NIF ranking of the institute to decide where you want to go. Always aim for the best, I would say. Like always aim for the top institutes like SPA Delhi, NIT Calicut, IIT Kharagpur, especially the ones on the top of the NIF ranking, and also CPT. CPT is a really good institution.
Hope we were able to answer your question. If you have any more doubt, please put them forth. More questions? Anyone?
Asna, if no more questions, we can wind up the session.
Okay, sir. So I would like to invite my friend Miss Shraddha AK to give the vote of thanks. Shraddha, over to you.
Thank you, Hasna. Good evening, everyone. It's indeed an honor for me to propose a vote of thanks for this meeting. I, on behalf of all the participants of the session, first of all spread my most sincere thanks for Team Ignite for hosting such a fruitful event for all the budding architects out there. I'd like to express my gratitude to Apta Senior for providing us insights about the career in architecture. Next, I'd like to thank Mr. Abhilash OS for providing us information regarding the exam pattern of JEE and much more. I'd also like to thank Mr. Abhinav for sharing his wonderful experiences and preparation tips and strategies for cracking the same exam. Last but not least, I express my gratitude to all the volunteers and participants of this program, because of whom we made this meeting possible. Once again, I'd like to state that we are extremely glad to all the speakers here over the meeting. We thank you for being with us. It has remained a presence of pleasure. Have a great day ahead. Thank you.
Hasna?
Yes, sir.
Okay, കുഴപ്പമില്ല. ഇനി ബാക്കി സ്വാതി പോയിന്റല്ലോ അല്ലേ? സ്വാതിനോട് പറഞ്ഞാൽ മതി.
ഞാൻ പറയാം, സർ.
ഓക്കെ, ഞാൻ വിളിക്കാം പിന്നെ. ശരി, ഓക്കെ.
താങ്ക് യു, സർ.